My hands were shaking as I stood at that altar. Not from nerves, from rage. Pure, calculated rage. Because the man standing in front of me, looking at me with those loving eyes, whispering how beautiful I looked, had no idea that I knew everything. The affair, the lies, the plan to destroy me. And he definitely had no idea who I really was. Here's what I need you to understand before I tell you this story. Have you ever loved someone so completely that you would have given them everything, only to discover they saw you as nothing more than a target? A mark? A joke? That's what happened to me. And what I did about it? Well, some of you will say I went too far. Others will say I didn't go far enough. But here's my question for you, and I want you to really think about it. If the person you loved, the person you were about to marry, had been playing you for years while sleeping with someone else, while their entire family mocked you behind your back, while they literally planned to use you and discard you like trash, what would you do? Would you walk away quietly? Or would you make sure the entire world saw exactly who they really were? Keep that question in your mind, because what happened at my wedding didn't just destroy one man. It brought down an entire criminal empire, exposed decades of secrets, and changed multiple lives forever, including mine. I'm Victoria, and 350 people watched me plug my phone into a projector at my own wedding. They watched my groom's face turn from confident to terrified in seconds. They watched his mistress try to run. They watched his mother scream my name. But the moment I revealed the truth, the one thing nobody in that room saw coming, even the man who thought he'd conned me, collapsed right there at the altar. This is that story. And I'm warning you now, don't skip a single second, because the twists will blow your mind. My name is Victoria. For 7 years, everyone knew me as Victoria Chen, the broke graphic designer living paycheck to paycheck in a studio apartment, with walls so thin I could hear my neighbor's TV through them. I shopped at discount stores. My car had 200,000 miles on it. I ate ramen more nights than I care to admit. At least that's the version of me they all knew. None of it was real. Every detail was manufactured. My actual name is Victoria Sinclair Montgomery. If that name means anything to you in the world of corporate America, you'd understand why I kept it hidden. My family doesn't just have money, we control it. Real estate across 5 states. My mother chairs 3 Fortune 500 boards. My father's signature approves billion-dollar deals. I grew up in an estate with 15 bedrooms and a staff larger than most small businesses. So why was I pretending to struggle? Why live in 600 square feet when I owned properties I'd never even visited? Because at 21, I watched wealth destroy my older sister's soul. Her name is Rebecca. She was brilliant, stunning, and most dangerously trusting. She fell for a man who seemed like everything she'd dreamed of. He was attentive, romantic, and proposed after 8 months. My parents urged caution, but Rebecca was convinced she'd found her soulmate. Their wedding cost more than most people earn in a lifetime. 3 years later, Rebecca discovered the nightmare. He'd never cared about her. He'd researched our family meticulously, targeted Rebecca deliberately, and married her for one singular purpose: access to our fortune. He spent 3 years playing devoted husband while systematically draining her accounts, manipulating her trust, gaining control of everything. Then one morning, he vanished. Millions disappeared with him. We hired the best investigators money could buy. They found nothing. But the money wasn't the tragedy. What broke us was what it did to Rebecca. She stopped speaking. Not because she physically couldn't, but because she chose silence. She'd given someone her complete trust, and he'd used it as a weapon against her. Now she sits by windows for hours, staring at nothing. Sometimes I visit and talk about my day. And she'll turn toward me with eyes that look empty of everything that once made her Rebecca. That's what our wealth did to her. It made her a target, and someone took perfect aim. I made myself a promise that day. If I ever found love, it would be with someone who wanted me, not my inheritance. I constructed an entirely new identity. Moved to a city where nobody recognized the Montgomery name. Got a legitimate job earning $38,000 a year. Rented that cramped apartment. Built a completely authentic life as someone ordinary. For 7 years, I was just Victoria. Not an heiress, not a billionaire's daughter, just me. Then Alexander walked into my life. Alexander Bennett. God, he seemed perfect in every way that mattered. I was hunched over my laptop at a coffee shop, deadline looming, when he approached and asked if the chair across from me was available. He had this smile that made my pulse race. We ended up talking for 7 hours straight that first day. He told me he'd built his tech startup from scratch, that he believed success should be earned through hard work, that material things meant nothing compared to genuine connection. I believed every single word. We dated for 3 years. 3 years of what I genuinely thought was authentic love. He'd surprise me with flowers from the corner bodega. We'd spend evenings cooking together in my tiny kitchen where we could barely move without bumping into each other. He'd wrap his arms around me at night and describe the future we'd build together. I thought I'd finally discovered what I'd been searching for all along. I was catastrophically wrong. But I didn't know that until I met his family, and that's when the foundation started developing cracks. His mother's name was Diane. The instant she saw me, hatred radiated from her like heat. The first time Alexander brought me to their mansion, this sprawling property with security gates and cameras everywhere, Diane examined me like I was something revolting she'd discovered on her expensive shoes. She actually questioned whether my dress came from a second-hand store. When I confirmed it, trying to be genuine, she released this laugh. Not amused. Cruel. His father, Richard, was somehow worse. He refused to make eye contact with me. Throughout that initial dinner, I attempted conversation. Asked about his business ventures, his interests, anything to connect. He responded with single syllables while studying his plate intensely. After we finished eating, I overheard him tell Alexander, "Is this truly the best option available to you?" I acted like I hadn't heard, but Alexander merely shrugged with indifference. The cruelty intensified over time. Diane would physically grab my clothing and critique every choice. Once she literally threw away my winter coat, claiming it embarrassed her to be seen with me wearing it. She made me sit at a different table during family gatherings because my appearance clashed with their dining room aesthetic. She'd introduce me to their social circle as Alexander's little charity case. When I tried discussing how his mother treated me with Alexander, he'd exhale heavily and dismiss it. "She's overprotective, Victoria. You're being overly sensitive." And then there was Isabella Rodriguez. Alexander described her as his best friend and business partner since their college days. She had complete access to his entire life, his home, his office, his schedule. She'd enter his apartment without knocking. She had her own set of keys. When I questioned this arrangement, Alexander responded, "We're practically family. Stop being so paranoid." But the way Isabella looked at him had nothing familial about it, and the way she looked at me radiated pure contempt. Isabella touched Alexander constantly, her hand on his shoulder, leaning close to whisper privately in his ear, laughing at everything he said regardless of whether it was funny. She called me Alexander's little rescue project directly to my face. At one dinner party, she announced to a group, "Alexander has this thing for saving broken things, injured animals, failing artists, poverty-stricken girlfriends." Everyone laughed. Alexander didn't defend me. He just smiled awkwardly and changed the subject. I should have walked away. Every warning sign was there, practically screaming at me. But I loved him. Or I loved the illusion I'd convinced myself was real. And I kept believing that if I just tried harder, proved myself worthy somehow, his family would finally accept me. I was so desperate to prove that someone could love me without knowing about my wealth that I ignored every blazing red flag. 4 weeks before our wedding, Diane cornered me alone in a bathroom at their estate. We'd just endured a 3-hour dinner where she'd spent the entire time criticizing everything from my posture to my laugh. I was washing my hands when she entered and locked the door behind her. She positioned herself blocking the only exit and produced this cold smile. "You'll never be adequate for this family," she said quietly. Her tone was calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. "We're merely tolerating your presence because Alexander insists on this charade. But marriages crumble, sweetheart. And when this one inevitably does, you'll walk away with absolutely nothing. Not a single dollar, not even a memory worth keeping. Nothing." She gripped my arm then, her manicured nails digging into my skin deep enough to leave crescent-shaped welts. "The moment you sign those documents at the wedding, you become our property. You'll smile on our command. You'll speak only when we grant permission, and you'll vanish the instant we're finished with you. Are we clear?" I looked at her hand, marking my arm, at those cruel indentations her nails were creating. Then I met her eyes directly and smiled back. "Diane," I said softly, "do you have any idea what happens to people who threaten a Montgomery?" She looked confused for a moment. "What are you talking about?" "You're about to receive a comprehensive education." I didn't elaborate. I simply washed my hands methodically, dried them carefully, and walked out. But that was the precise moment everything transformed. That was when I stopped being their victim and started planning their complete destruction. 3 weeks before my wedding, I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus, and his reputation in the industry was legendary. I didn't hire him to investigate Alexander. I hired him to investigate Alexander's entire family. Something about them felt fundamentally wrong. Dangerously wrong. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. Marcus contacted me 4 days later with urgency in his voice. "Miss Victoria, you need to be sitting down for this conversation." What he revealed made my blood turn to ice. Diane wasn't born into wealth. She'd married into it. But here's what matters. Richard had been married previously. His first wife was named Catherine, and she died 24 years ago in what was ruled an accident. She fell down the staircase in their home. Diane married Richard 7 months later. Catherine's family attempted legal action. They alleged murder, claimed Diane and Richard had been conducting an affair, insisted the timing was impossibly suspicious. But the case evaporated. Money exchanged hands secretly. Evidence mysteriously disappeared. Witnesses suddenly developed severe memory problems. And Isabella, she wasn't merely Alexander's business partner, she was Diane's niece. Diane had strategically positioned her in Alexander's life when he started university. Every significant decision Alexander made, Isabella influenced. Every girlfriend he'd had before me, Isabella had systematically destroyed. One woman lost her career after Isabella made strategic phone calls. Another had her apartment lease inexplicably terminated. A third was offered substantial money to leave the state permanently and never contact Alexander again. She accepted the offer, but I kept digging because something still felt incomplete. 10 days before my wedding, Alexander's behavior shifted noticeably. He'd receive phone calls late at night and lock himself in the bathroom to take them. He'd come home smelling like expensive perfume that definitely wasn't mine. When I asked about it, he'd snap defensively. "Why are you being so paranoid? Why are you monitoring me? Don't you trust me?" Then I discovered a hotel receipt in his suit jacket pocket. I was taking his clothes to the dry cleaner when it fell out. The Belmont Hotel, penthouse suite, charged 4 times in 1 month, always on Thursday evenings. We lived together. Why would he need a hotel room? I called the hotel pretending to be his personal assistant, asking to confirm his regular reservation. The receptionist responded cheerfully. Absolutely, Mr. Bennett has the penthouse suite reserved every Thursday from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. Should I maintain the reservation after his wedding ceremony? My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped my phone. I thanked her politely and disconnected. Then I did something I never imagined myself capable of. I went to Alexander's office at 2 a.m. using the key he'd given me for emergencies. His computer was still powered on. Logged in. I felt nauseated doing it, but I examined his files systematically. That's when I found the folder labeled V Investigation. Inside were hundreds of documents about me. Background checks spanning years, financial investigations, detailed family tree searches. He'd been investigating me for months, attempting to discover any hidden assets or wealth. But every report concluded identically. Subject appears to possess minimal assets and no significant family wealth. He had no idea. He genuinely had no idea who I actually was. Then I opened his message history and my entire world shattered into irreparable pieces. There were thousands of texts between him and Isabella. 4 more days and she signs the prenuptial agreement. Then we're protected. That was from Isabella. Alexander's response made my stomach turn. I almost feel guilty. She genuinely believes I love her. Isabella replied, "Please, she's nobody. You're doing her a favor by giving her a lifestyle she could never afford otherwise." Alexander wrote back, "Once we're legally married and she signs everything, we can return to normal. I miss you terribly, babe." Isabella responded, "I miss you too. Can't wait until this performance is finished and we can stop this pretending." I sat frozen in his office chair staring at those messages, and something inside me died. Or perhaps it was reborn. I'm still not entirely sure, but I wasn't crying. I was calm. Eerily, unnaturally calm. I continued reading. The family group chat was somehow even more vicious. Diane wrote, "I cannot believe we have to pretend tolerance for this trash for 4 more days. She chews food like an animal." Richard responded, "At least the prenuptial agreement protects everything. When Alexander divorces her in 18 months, she receives $75,000 and a used vehicle. That's generous for someone of her caliber." Isabella added, "I'm accepting bets on how long before she signs. I predict 3 minutes after the ceremony. She'll be so grateful to be married, she won't even read the document." Diane replied, "The foolish girl probably thinks she's Cinderella. Wait until she realizes she married into a business transaction." Alexander wrote, "Let's just survive this. Once it's legal, Victoria becomes useful in other ways. The Singapore investors want to work exclusively with stable family men. She's perfect for that image. Devoted wife, eventual children, the complete package." But then I found something that made everything else seem insignificant. It was an email from Diane to their attorney. The subject line read, "Prenuptial agreement modification urgent." The email stated, "Modify the prenuptial agreement as we discussed. Ensure Clause 9C is activated and properly documented. We cannot afford any complications." I located Clause 9C in the prenuptial document. It specified that if Alexander died within the first 18 months of marriage, everything would transfer to his designated beneficiary, not his spouse. His designated beneficiary. When I checked who that was, I saw Isabella's name. There was also a life insurance policy attached. $15 million payable to Isabella if anything happened to Alexander in the first 18 months. They weren't just planning to humiliate me. They weren't just planning to use me for Alexander's business reputation. They were planning something far darker, and I was standing directly in the center of their trap. For the first time in 7 years, I called my father. It was 4 a.m. He answered on the first ring, voice alert. "Victoria, sweetheart, is something wrong?" "Dad," I said, and my voice was steady as steel. "I need our family attorneys, all of them. I need them at my apartment in 3 hours." There was a pause. Then he said, "I'll be there in 90 minutes. My father arrived with 8 lawyers, 3 investigators, and my mother, who'd been crying the entire drive. She embraced me so tightly I could barely breathe. "My baby girl," she whispered. "We've missed you beyond words." I hugged her back, but I didn't have time for emotions. Not yet. "Soon, Mum, I promise." We worked through the entire night. My lawyers examined everything I'd discovered. They uncovered that Alexander's company was built entirely on fraud. Fake investors, embezzled funds, offshore accounts in 4 countries. Diane and Richard were helping him launder money through their legitimate businesses. Isabella was manipulating the financial records, creating fraudulent reports, concealing transactions systematically. They'd constructed an empire built entirely on lies, and they'd defrauded 22 investors who'd trusted them with their life savings. 15 of those investors had lost everything. One of them was a man named Mr. Harrison. He was 71 years old, retired, and he'd invested his entire retirement fund in Alexander's company based on fabricated reports that Isabella had created. When the money disappeared, he couldn't face his wife of 47 years. He left her a note saying he'd failed her, that he was sorry, that he couldn't survive the shame. Then he walked into his garage, started his car, and never came out. His wife discovered him 4 hours later. I read that investigation report and I made my decision. I wasn't just going to expose them, I was going to completely destroy them. And I was going to ensure everyone witnessed exactly who these people really were. On my wedding day, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning. I didn't feel nervous, I felt powerful. I put on my wedding gown, a custom creation that my father had secretly commissioned from a designer in Milan. It cost $68,000. I applied my makeup flawlessly. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman reflected back. She looked like a warrior dressed in white silk. My father knocked softly on my door. "Victoria, are you absolutely certain about this?" He asked carefully. "We can cancel everything right now. We can handle this privately through legal channels." I shook my head. "No, Dad. They need to be exposed publicly, in front of everyone, so they can never hurt anyone else again." He nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. "Then let's go to war." The wedding venue was spectacular. 350 guests filled the space with anticipation. But what those guests didn't know was that 60 of them were my people. Attorneys, investigators, even 3 FBI agents who'd been building a case against Alexander's company for 8 months. My evidence had given them everything they needed for indictments. Diane burst into my dressing room without knocking, exactly as she always did. She looked at my dress and sneered with disgust. "My God, that gown is so plain. I suppose we can't expect sophistication from someone like you." Then she grabbed my arm, her nails digging into the same spots she'd marked before, and leaned close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume. "Listen very carefully, you insignificant nobody. After you sign those documents today, you become our possession. You'll smile when we command it. You'll speak only when we permit it. And you'll disappear the moment we're finished with you." I looked at her hand on my arm, at the fresh bruises she was creating. Then I looked directly into her cold eyes and smiled genuinely. "Diane, do you know what happens to people who threaten a Montgomery?" She looked confused, almost annoyed. "What are you babbling about?" "You're about to find out. Front row seat to your own destruction." The music began. My father took my arm and we walked down that aisle together. I saw Diane's face when she recognized my father from countless magazine covers and business news segments. Her face went completely white. She knew. She finally knew. And it was far too late. Alexander stood at the altar in his designer suit, looking smug and confident. Isabella sat in the front row, wearing an off-white dress that was practically bridal, smirking at me like she'd already won every game we'd never actually played. I reached the altar and took Alexander's hands. They felt cold, or perhaps that was just me finally seeing him clearly. The officiant began the ceremony. We are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Alexander and Victoria. Alexander was squeezing my hands tightly, whispering, "You look absolutely stunning. I can't wait to begin our life together." I whispered back, "Neither can I. It's going to be unforgettable." When the officiant reached the vows, he asked, "Do you, Alexander, take Victoria to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Alexander smiled widely and said confidently, "I absolutely do." Then the officiant turned to me. "And do you, Victoria, take Alexander to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I paused deliberately. The entire room fell into absolute silence. Alexander squeezed my hands harder, nervousness creeping into his expression. "Victoria," he whispered urgently. I pulled my hands away from his and reached into my dress where I'd hidden my phone. "Before I answer that question," I said clearly, my voice carrying through the silent venue, "everyone here needs to see something first." I connected my phone to the projector screen behind us, the screen that was supposed to show our romantic love story slideshow. Alexander's face transformed from confused to pale in approximately 4 seconds. "Victoria, what are you doing?" he hissed desperately. Diane stood up from her seat. "This is completely inappropriate. Turn that off immediately." I ignored them both. The first image appeared on the massive screen. It was a text message from Isabella to Alexander. "I love you desperately. I hate watching you pretend with her." The crowd gasped collectively. Isabella jumped to her feet. "This is fabricated. She created fake messages." I smiled at her calmly. "Is it fabricated? Should I show the surveillance videos as well? I have hours of security footage from your apartment, Isabella. Extremely interesting footage." The next slide appeared. Hotel receipts, dozens of them, all from the Belmont Hotel. All on Thursday evenings, all charged to Alexander's personal credit card. Then more text messages. Alexander to Isabella. I almost feel guilty. She genuinely believes I love her. Isabella to Alexander. "She's nobody. You're doing her a favor." Alexander grabbed my arm roughly. "Victoria, stop this immediately. Let me explain. This isn't what it appears to be." I yanked my arm away. "Explain what, Alexander? How you've been sleeping with your cousin while planning to marry me?" That got a visceral reaction from the crowd. Murmurs exploded into shocked conversations. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. The next slide showed the family group chat. Every cruel message displayed in large text for 350 people to see and process. Diane calling me trash. Richard calling me an animal. Isabella making bets about how quickly I'd sign the prenuptial agreement. Alexander saying I was useful for his business image, and nothing more. I let each message stay on the screen long enough for people to read it, to understand it, to be horrified by it. Diane was screaming now, trying desperately to reach the projector. "Turn that off. You have absolutely no right. This is private." I looked at her calmly. "Private? You want to discuss privacy? How about we discuss what you did to Richard's first wife?" That made her freeze completely. The next slide was a newspaper article from 24 years ago. Socialite Catherine Bennett dies in tragic home accident. Below it was the police report that my investigators had obtained, the one that detailed suspicious circumstances, the one that mentioned a witness who saw Diane leaving the house immediately before Catherine's fatal accident, the one that showed money being paid to make the investigation disappear permanently. The room erupted into absolute chaos. People were standing, shouting, crying, but I raised my voice above all of it. And now let's discuss the business you're all so proud of. The next slides showed bank statements, offshore accounts, fraudulent investor reports. Alexander's company is built entirely on fraud. He's embezzled over $63 million. Diane and Richard helped him launder it through their businesses. Isabella created false financial reports to hide everything. I turned to look directly at the FBI agents positioned strategically in the crowd. They were already standing, moving purposefully toward the altar. Officers, I believe you have sufficient evidence now. One of them nodded professionally. Alexander Bennett, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Alexander backed away from them, his face white as his shirt. What? No, this is insane. Victoria, tell them this is fake. Tell them! The agents grabbed his arms and turned him around to handcuff him efficiently. He was struggling, panicking. This was all Isabella's idea. My mother forced me into it. Victoria, please, I love you. I genuinely do love you. 2 more agents walked toward Diane, who tried to run in her designer heels. She didn't get far before they caught her. Diane Bennett, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and money laundering. She was screaming, actually screaming like something feral. You cannot do this. Do you know who we are? Richard just sat in his chair and buried his face in his hands. When they came for him, he didn't resist. He looked like he'd aged 30 years in 30 minutes. Isabella tried to escape through the kitchen entrance, but my cousin James, who'd been guarding that exit, stopped her. She fought viciously, scratching and kicking until the agents restrained her. As they handcuffed Alexander, he looked at me with tears streaming down his face. Victoria, please, I can explain everything. I do love you. I swear on everything I love you. Just tell them this is a mistake. I stepped closer to him, close enough that only he could hear me whisper. You want to know something amusing, Alexander? You investigated me for months. You found nothing. You thought I was nobody. I leaned in and whispered directly in his ear. My full name is Victoria Sinclair Montgomery. My family owns half this city. My father's company is worth more than yours could ever dream of being. You didn't marry up, you foolish man. I was marrying so far down I needed a ladder to reach you. I pulled back to watch his face. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His mouth opened and closed wordlessly. His face went from white to gray. Montgomery? He whispered. As in Montgomery Industries? The Montgomery real estate empire? I nodded slowly. I'm worth more than your entire family combined times 10. I could have bought your fraudulent little company with my monthly allowance. His legs actually gave out. The agents had to hold him upright. But why? He gasped. Why did you pretend? I laughed then, and it felt powerful. Because I wanted someone to love me for who I am. Instead, I found a con artist who thought he was conning me. The irony is absolutely delicious, isn't it? Diane, being dragged past me in handcuffs, spat in my direction. She missed. You manipulative little witch, you played us. I walked over to her calmly. You grabbed my arm earlier, Diane. You left bruises. I pulled up my sleeve to show the marks to everyone, especially to the officers. That's assault. Add it to her charges, please. Then I leaned close to her ear. You told me marriages fall apart and I'd leave with nothing. You were half right. This marriage did fall apart, but you're the one leaving with nothing. Actually, less than nothing. You're leaving with a prison sentence. Enjoy it. As they led Isabella past me, she tried one desperate time. We would have destroyed you. She was crying, her makeup running down her face in black streams. I didn't even blink. You can't destroy what you never had access to. I was always 10 steps ahead. Every document you forged, every account you hid, every lie you told, My investigators documented everything. You didn't lose today, Isabella. You were never even playing the same game. After they took all 4 of them away in handcuffs, I turned to face the remaining guests. Some were crying, some looked shell-shocked, some were actually applauding. I took the microphone from the stunned officiant. I apologize that your weekend was wasted on this disaster, but I couldn't let these people hurt anyone else. Alexander's company defrauded 22 investors. 15 of them lost their entire life savings. 4 of them attempted suicide. 1 of them succeeded. I let that information sink in. The room was completely silent now. His name was Mr. Harrison. He was 71 years old. He invested his retirement money in Alexander's company based on fake reports that Isabella created. When the money disappeared, he couldn't face his wife of 47 years. He left a note saying he'd failed her. Then he walked into his garage, started his car, and never came out. His wife found him 4 hours later. My voice cracked slightly, but I continued. I could have gone to the FBI privately. I could have had them arrested quietly. But then you wouldn't know. Their friends wouldn't know. Their business partners wouldn't know. I needed everyone to see exactly who these people truly are. Monsters wearing expensive suits and designer dresses. I took a breath. You might think this is a victory for me, but I'm standing here in a wedding gown with no wedding. I spent 3 years loving someone who never existed. I planned a future with a man who saw me as a target. I wanted love to be real so desperately that I hid who I was, and in hiding myself, I attracted exactly what I was afraid of. People who only care about money. Then I said something I hadn't planned to say, something that just erupted from deep inside me. But there's something else none of you know, not even my family. I took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. I found out 10 days ago. I'm carrying the child of a man who's going to prison, a man who never loved me, a man whose mother told me I wasn't worthy of breathing the same air as them. The gasps were audible throughout the venue. My mother stood up from her seat, tears streaming down her face. I kept talking. This baby will grow up knowing their father is a criminal, but they'll also grow up knowing their mother was strong enough to do the right thing even when it hurt more than anything. Alexander, halfway to the exit in handcuffs, suddenly stopped struggling with the agents. Victoria, we're having a baby. His voice broke completely. Tears were streaming down his face uncontrollably. I know you won't believe me, but in the beginning it was authentic. Those first 4 months before Isabella got inside my head, before my mother poisoned everything, I genuinely did love you. I was going to tell them all to go to hell and just be with you. He was sobbing now, ugly crying in front of everyone. But then they showed me their investigation on you. They convinced me you were also hiding something, that you were also a con artist. They made me paranoid and stupid, and I destroyed the only real thing I ever had. He looked at my stomach. We're having a baby and I'm never going to meet them. They're going to grow up hating me and I deserve it. I deserve every second of it. I walked up to him one final time. Part of me, a small, foolish part, felt sorry for him. You want to know the saddest part, Alexander? If you'd just trusted me, if you'd just asked, I would have told you everything. I was planning to tell you the truth after the wedding. I was going to surprise you with who I really was. We could have had everything. But you chose them over me. You chose lies over truth. And now our child will pay the price for your choices. Then I pulled out one final document from my dress. I'd been saving this moment. This is a DNA test. I had it done 5 days ago when I found out I was pregnant. Alexander looked confused. So did everyone else. I smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was sad and tired and completely done with everything. The baby isn't yours, Alexander. His face went completely blank. What? Remember that medical conference I attended 8 weeks ago? The cardiology summit in Boston? The one you said you were too busy to attend because you were meeting with investors? I paused. Those investors were fabricated, by the way. You were at the Belmont Hotel with Isabella that night. I called you from Boston crying because I felt alone in a city where I didn't know anyone, and you hung up on me because you said you were busy. Understanding was starting to dawn on his face, horror replacing the confusion. I met someone at that conference. His name is Marcus. He's a pediatric cardiac surgeon. We sat next to each other at a gala dinner. We talked for hours about real things, meaningful things. He told me about saving children's lives. I told him about my real dreams, my real fears. And for the first time in 3 years, someone actually listened to me. I felt tears on my cheeks now. But I kept talking. We spent one night together. Just one. It wasn't planned. It just happened. And I felt so guilty afterward. I almost told you 100 times. But now I'm grateful because this baby doesn't have to be connected to you at all. Alexander looked like I'd physically stabbed him through the heart. So you cheated on me. His voice was small, broken, almost childlike. You're standing here exposing me for cheating, and you cheated too? I nodded slowly. Yes, I did. I made a mistake one night when I was lonely and broken, and you were in bed with your mistress. The difference is I felt genuine guilt. I was going to confess everything. You never were. You never even considered it. I looked at him one final time. So you see, Alexander, you lost a wife who was secretly worth hundreds of millions. You lost your freedom. You lost your company. You lost your family's reputation. And you lost a baby that was never even yours to begin with. That's what happens when you play games with people's hearts and lives. I started to walk away, then turned back one last time. Oh, and one more thing. Marcus, that surgeon I met, he knew who I was from the very beginning. My father introduced us 4 years ago at a medical charity gala. He loved me when he knew I was wealthy, and he loved me when I was pretending to be struggling. He reached out after that conference and told me he couldn't stop thinking about me. We've been talking regularly. He already knows about the baby. He's asked to be in our child's life. He wants to be a father to them. I looked at Alexander's devastated face one final time. That's what authentic love looks like, Alexander. Someone who wants you in their life, not someone who sees you as useful. You should take notes for your next relationship. Oh, wait. You'll be in prison for the next 20 years. Never mind. The agents led him away. He was crying so hard he couldn't walk properly. Diane was still screaming about lawyers and how we'd all pay for this humiliation. Richard looked like he'd aged 100 years in one afternoon, and Isabella was spitting and cursing at everyone within range. I stood there in my wedding gown in front of 350 people, and I felt lighter than I had in years. My mother ran up to embrace me tightly. My father was right behind her. I'm so proud of you, he whispered into my hair. You're stronger than all of us combined. My sister Rebecca was there too. I hadn't even known she was coming. She walked up to me slowly, deliberately, and for the first time in 7 years, she spoke. Her voice was scratchy from disuse, but it was there. It was real. You did it, she said simply, clearly. You did what I couldn't do. You fought back. Then she hugged me and we both cried. Real tears. Healing tears. That was 8 months ago. It's been quite a journey since that day. Alexander got 20 years for fraud and conspiracy. Diane got 15 for money laundering and conspiracy. Richard got 12 and had a massive stroke in prison 4 months into his sentence. He survived, but he's partially paralyzed now. Isabella got 22 because she tried to destroy evidence after her arrest and threatened a witness. They all appealed. They all lost. I'm 8 months pregnant now. My baby girl is kicking as I record this story for you. Marcus comes to every single doctor's appointment. We're taking things slowly, carefully, figuring out what we are to each other and what we could become. But he's absolutely wonderful. He's patient. He's honest. He holds my hand during ultrasounds and cries when he sees her moving on the screen. The 22 investors that Alexander defrauded, I personally compensated every single one of them. It cost me $58 million. My father thought I was absolutely insane, but I didn't care. When I handed Mr. Harrison's widow her check, she cried and told me, "You gave my husband justice. You gave him peace. You gave me closure." That was worth every single penny. My sister Rebecca is talking again. Not constantly, not like she used to, but she's trying every day. She's in intensive therapy, working through her trauma methodically. She told me last week that watching me stand up to Alexander gave her hope that maybe, just maybe, she could heal too. We're planning to start a foundation together to help victims of financial fraud and romantic con artists. We're going to call it Catherine's Foundation after Richard's first wife, who nobody fought for. People ask me constantly if I regret hiding who I was. They ask if I should have just been honest from the very start. And honestly, I still don't know the definitive answer to that question, because being fake helped me see clearly who was real. My father, my mother, my sister, my friend Elena, and a man I barely knew but who chose honesty and integrity over everything else. They're still here. Everyone else is gone, destroyed by their own greed and cruelty. Sometimes the worst day of your entire life becomes the best thing that ever happened to you because it shows you the absolute truth. And truth, no matter how painful, how devastating, how world-shattering, is always superior to a beautiful lie. So now I want your honest opinion. If you were in my position, would you have exposed them publicly like I did, or would you have handled it quietly through private legal channels? Do you think I was wrong to hide who I was from the beginning? Do you think the public humiliation was too far, or exactly what they deserved? Comment below because I genuinely want to hear your perspective on this. If you want to know what happened when Alexander started sending me desperate letters from prison, begging for forgiveness and claiming he found God, leave a comment saying, "letters," and I'll tell you that whole story. If you want to know more about Marcus and whether we're actually still together and what our relationship looks like now, comment Marcus below. And if you think I crossed a line somewhere in this story or made the wrong choices, I genuinely want to hear your opinion. Comment your thoughts, and let's have a real conversation about it. Hit that subscribe button right now because my life is far from boring, and this story isn't even close to finished. Trust me, there's so much more. Like how Diane's secret daughter that absolutely nobody knew existed showed up at my door 5 months ago looking for revenge and answers. Or how Isabella is trying to write a tell-all book about her version of events from prison and how my lawyers are handling that situation. But those are complete stories for another day, another video. I'm Victoria Montgomery. Thank you for listening to my story, for staying until the very end, for caring enough to hear the truth. And remember this, never let anyone make you feel small, inadequate, or worthless, especially when you're standing on a mountain they can't even see, let alone comprehend. Now smash that like button if this story shocked you. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this insane journey. And drop a comment below with your honest thoughts because I read every single one. I'll see you in the next video. Stay strong out there.